Welcome back to the Runaways YouTube channel. So I think the last time we did the recording, the audio is like a little bit messed up, but today it's going to be a little bit better. So today I wanted to continue the series of classically constructed decks that you might want to play or will definitely be seeing at your CC RTNs to try to help you do better. So we have I have two decks pulled up. One is Matthew Folk's Pro Tour Baltimore Lexi deck, which is kind of like what the Team Magnolia was playing. And then here's Andrew Rothermel from Wolfpack. And so both of these guys made top 8 playing Lexi. Lexi, I think, is one of the strongest aggro decks, if you can call her that, in the format. And from doing a bunch of my coaching sessions with people, just a shout out, if you want to receive free coaching, just make sure you record some of your games and then upload them onto YouTube or any other video platform. And then I'll include a link to the Google form in the description below if you want to receive free coaching. I stream Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, currently 10 a.m. The time is like a little bit loose right now. We're trying to figure things out on Twitch at the Runaways TCG Twitch account. So going back into the decks, basically from some of my coaching sessions, I feel that one thing that can kind of jumpstart you guys in your understanding of how to play these decks or how to play against these decks is to understand kind of like the composition of the cards, in that the majority of Flesh and Blood decks are just like assemblies of certain packages or types of cards. Because after all, you need consistency, so you need cards to be fulfilling similar roles in order to achieve consistency. So understanding like what cards play well together, what kind of packages exist, I think is pretty helpful. So the first thing is to talk about Lexi as from like a higher level understanding of like what her place in the metagame is. So she is a deck that can output pretty high average damage per turn. This is buffered by the fact that there's a bunch of cards that Lexi, almost all the Lexi decks play, notably 3 of a Kind and Codex of Frailty, and maybe some other cards like Premeditate or Codex of Inertia. So Rothamel was not playing Codex of Inertia, but I believe Matthew Folks was playing 3 Codex of Inertias and Premeditates. So the function of these cards is they just let you continuously output, 5-card hands. So if your 5-card hand ends up doing like between like 16 to 18 damage, the fact that you get to like keep doing this over and over again because of these cards that net you advantage is really like what the Lexi deck is all about. So it's not quite as explosive as aggro decks as we've seen in the past, like Fi, where Lexi can, but like very rarely outputs, like 25 plus damage in a turn. But the core part of her strategy is to, apply pressure via some of these attacks that have relevant hit triggers like Heat Seeker, Heat Seeker, Drill Shot, Infecting Shot, Endless Arrow. Like all these attacks have hit triggers on them. So you're like incentivizing your opponent to block. And while they're blocking, you get to continually put on the pressure. And so I would categorize Lexi as more of like a pressure tempo style of deck than just like pure aggro. But that's just to give you guys a general idea of the framework to kind of think about her cards in. So let me just make a copy of these, and then we can edit. So the core of the deck is going to be So the core of the deck is going to be comprised of arrows. If you look at the stats, this list is playing 47. That's the Magnolia list, and the the Wolfpack list is playing 48 arrows. And some of these arrows are going to be in the sideboard, but like it just gives you a general sense. Like the deck is almost like all entirely arrows, right? So arrows come in two costs for the most part. They're 0 cost arrows and then 1 cost arrows. And the main thing that is kind of letting you play multiple arrows per turn is Lexi's weapon Voltaire, strike twice. And this is a very powerful weapon because it lets you convert resource into either +1 or go again, depending on whichever thing that you need. So if you think about it this way, then like all her 0 cost arrows are essentially 1 for 4 go guns with hit triggers, and then all of the but then they can also be 1 for 5s, just like on rate without go again, or they can be 2 for 6, just like that's what it is with a hit trigger, or a 2 for 5 go again. So on surface value, this, like, while these attacks all end up being kind of on rate, it's not really clear, like, just like by itself, like why these are really that special. I mean, like, it's most aggro decks can achieve that rate fairly easily, but it's more so the way that she can string these attacks together. So for example, if you like, decks rarely present 2 must blocks, but let's say if you're attacking with like an endless arrow that requires a block into a heat seeker, you can arrange the breakpoints so that they're like quite annoying to block. So for example, if you do it so it's like heat seeker for, like, depending on your opponent's like armor situation, sometimes it's better to go like 5 into 5, sometimes it's better to go 4 into 6. 4 into 6 is like less good if your opponent just like has like a bunch of 3 blocks. But the main point is just that I can manipulate the powers of my attacks to make it so that they're awkward to block, right? If I attack you with a heat seeker for 5 go again, and then you have to spend 2 cards blocking it, and then I attack you with an endless arrow for 5, then you're gonna have to spend 2 more cards to block it. And if you don't want to give me the hit triggers, and so in that situation, then basically I've traded 3 cards for 4, and I get to go like save that card's worth of value for the next turn, and it's like this kind of snowballing effect based off of the breakpoints. Unfortunately, that means that for people who want to play against Lexi, the trick is kind of figuring out like which hit triggers you kind of have to let hit, because if you want to take a stance where you try to where you want to be blocking all the hit triggers, you're just not going to come out ahead in the end. Lexi's main source of power is not necessarily in this like just like throwing arrows with go again, but it's more so like the support cards that get added on to these turns. So Rain Razors is was kind of like a staple for Lexi decks in the past. Lets you like put together this card can be worth maybe like 8 or even as high as 10 on a turn if you set it up well, right? Like Rain Razors with Bolt-in Shots, with 3 of a kind or Endless Arrow. Like the Rain Razors value can get pretty stupid. Even as soon as you do 3 arrows with it, it's already like pretty above rate. And then in Outsiders, Lexi basically got a couple of new cards which are really good. So Codex of Frailty, I'm sure you guys all know what Codex of Frailty does, but it's like another way to get like 2 cards worth of value, or more than 2 cards worth of value for 1. Premeditate, kind of same concept, where the goal is to get like, you get 1 card's worth of value from the +3, and then if you get the Ponder token, then you're getting like 2 cards worth of value. And Codex of Inertia. So this card was when we were testing, we weren't really sure how good this card was, and I think after playing with it a bunch, if you build your deck around kind of optimizing for the Codex of Inertia's play patterns, then this card's actually really strong, and it's like just as strong as Codex of Frailty, and in some cases is better than Codex of Frailty, because there are certain situations where your inertia token can be worth a card as well. So this card can be worth like up to 3 cards by itself. Whereas Codex of, like the Frailty token doesn't necessarily translate into a card's worth of value. And it's a little bit deeper than I want to go in the course of this video, but basically the biggest thing that you want to understand when you're playing Codex of Inertia is kind of like what your own ratios are, but then also what your opponent's plays are likely going to be. So for example, it's really difficult for like Oldhim to play a 2-card hand. Like Oldhim just does not really have that many 2-card hands, especially 2 cards that use a card. What I mean by that is the most common Oldhim 2-card hand is just like, attack with hammer and arsenal a card. So Enlightened Strike is basically one of their only ways to, as a card to use the card to generate, to dump 2 cards worth of resources into a play. And so because of that, if you get the Oldhim to block with 3 cards, and then so they have 1 card left in their arsenal and a card in their hand, or you get to block or if they didn't start off with an arsenal, they block 2 cards. One of your better plays might just be to play Codex of Inertia and then use Lexi's ability to flip whatever you put in your arsenal face up and then pass. Because what you're doing is you're forcing the Oldhim into this situation where the card that they put on into their arsenal, like most like they cannot use it unless it's like an E-strike. So like 90% of the time, the inertia token is actually going to be worth a card by itself. Plus, you're going to get like a pretty free setup on them. And so it was definitely a pretty tricky card for us during testing, but in actuality is quite strong as well. So these 2 codexes, I think, definitely push Lexi like above, like way above like where she used to be. Now let's talk about the drawbacks of Lexi, and that's definitely her armor suite. So Lexi is a hero that just like cannot really play armor. Bullseye Bracers is one of her better glove spots or arms spots, just because of the added flexibility that it gives you. Being able to shoot like an additional arrow on a Rain Razor's turn or something like that. For boots, you could play Perch Grapplers for 2 armor. It's not necessarily good. I know some people have been contemplating playing Perch Grapplers now that some Oldhims might be on playing Buckle plus Buckling Blow combo. And so then you can block with Perch Grapplers, your Tunic, and a card from your hand to kind of stop that. But in general, like the legs equipment that you really want to be playing is Snapdragon Scalers, and that's because it gives you like a lot more flexibility of what you can arsenal. And a big part of learning how to play Lexi is understanding what kind of arsenal combinations are good for you, because the most powerful turns that you can really do are usually ones where you can like throw like a 6-card hand at your opponent, but like the 2 cards in your arsenal don't necessarily play well with each other, especially if it's just like 2 arrows that don't have go again. Then you really need like a Snapdragon Scalers to kind of fix the turn. Otherwise you're going to be blocking your whole hand and then shooting one of the arrows and trying to play a 5-card hand the next turn, which is not exactly where you want to be. So having this piece of equipment like really just gives you the added flexibility of like 1 turn, like you can just set up like whatever you want in your arsenal. And then New Horizons, of course, has 2 block, but you don't really want to be blocking with this card, especially because it has the clause where when it gets destroyed, you destroy your arsenal after, like when the combat chain closes. And so in general, Lexi herself is quite weak to hit triggers or towards getting disrupted. The plus side of some of the newer Lexi builds is that most of the cards block 3 because there's almost your entire deck is arrows. So if we look at the stats page again, like your average block value is 2.6. And this is in contrast, like if when you're playing a deck like 5, for example, I think your average block is like 2.2 to 2.3 or something like that. And having your average defense be 2.6 is actually quite good. Like, even though a card like Command and Conquer is one of the most disruptive cards to play against Lexi, it's very rare that Lexi has to block, more than 2 cards on Command and Conquer, unless there's like a pummel threatened or something like that. And so she has like a unique position where she both blocks like decently well and also has like all of these cards that offer like a ton of advantage in the form of cards. So the next topic that I wanted to talk about for Lexi is kind of card choices. So the reason why I have both these decks kind of pulled up is to kind of talk about the differences in card choice. So let's just talk about and we can do a comparison actually. This is a great feature from Fabrary. Very useful when we were doing testing to kind of see like what the differences between the decks are. So first we're going to take a look at cards that just like are not present in one deck but are present in the other. So on the left hand column we have the Wolfpack list, and on the right hand column we have the Team Magnolia list. So first things first, Chilling Ice Vein and Command and Conquer, these 2 cards are in the Wolfpack list but not in the Team Magnolia list. And I think that playing cards like Chilling Ice Vein, like Command and Conquer in your Lexi deck is basically a nod to understanding that you want to beat the mirror, basically. Chilling Ice Vein's also, I think, pretty decent into Azalea. Just because the hit trigger does, trade for a card. And Azalea doesn't block particularly well. And so this is like really what you want to be playing. These types of disruptive cards, heavier ice package is kind of what you want to be playing if you expect there to be, more rangers that you're going to play against. We see that both lists are playing 1 Death Touch Red, and I think Death Touch Red is kind of interesting. It's kind of like it's there because it's one of your best Codex of Frailty targets. It's also good as a popper and pretty good in the like against Dromai, and just like all around just like a pretty strong card. The reason why you can't really play 3 of is because it's very awkward to draw, and I suspect that the majority of the time, like ideally what you want to be doing with the Death Touch is like either you had to block with it on a turn or you got to, like play 1 early and you later on just like boost the value of your Codex of Frailties. Actually, in the Runaways list that we brought to Pro Tour, we weren't playing Death Touch because of, kind of the inconsistencies of playing a card like this, but just like, that's kind of what it's there for. We did try it out. Magnolia's list is playing 2 copies of Down and Dirty, whereas the the Wolfpack list does not. And Down and Dirty is, I think, almost exclusively like an anti-Dromai card. And the main benefit that this card has over any other 6-power attack that you can use as a popper is because you can set in your arsenal. So you never really get forced into like, the awkward play of, I have a popper in my hand, I don't really want to play it, or I don't have a good opportunity to play it. But then I also don't want to arsenal it because, the reason why it's in my deck is because it's a popper. So being able to do that, being able to, either counter your opponent's Codex of Frailties, or even just like using against Dromai, you use Codex of Frailty, you put it down and dirty into your arsenal face down, you can like flip it up to Lexi or something, and then that card is just like there as like a defense reaction or something. Like you're going to have access to a popper, you know, is a powerful interaction. So another card choice. Fatigue shots. These I suspect are primarily to play into, you know, like attacking Oldhams. And I think that this card, there is some merits to playing Fatigue Shot, but also in a lot of instances, you know, like the Oldham isn't really going to be incentivized to block this, since they will be blocking the majority of their turns and most of their attacks are going to be with their weapon. So it is quite nice when it lines up with, you know, an attack like a Command and Conquer or Endless Winter or something that they want to throw. But when it doesn't line up, then it can be quite awkward. But specifically, it's for that matchup. And Hamstring Shot is also, I think, like a kind of disruptive type of attack. It's kind of like a Blizzard Bolt. I think a little bit weaker than Chilling Ice Vein to disrupt the aggressive decks. But the added benefit is that you don't need to ice fuse, obviously. Magnolia was playing 3 copies of Lightning Surge, and Lightning Surge is actually quite a strong card in Lexi, because one of the things that it lets you do is it gives you a lot more flexibility, because it's a card that's always good to Arsenal. So when you draw it off of Ponder, it's always great. When you get it back with Codex of Frailty, you know, then it turns the Codex of Frailty into also giving whatever was in your arsenal go again. And so maybe like you're even willing to discard, for example, to, you know, give their arrow go again. Those situations can occur. And also if you just like have, you know, a 4-card hand plus like something that you want to arsenal, and so you have like 2 Voltaire loads, it lets you play even like the 3rd attack from your hand. If your hand was 3 arrows, then you couldn't do 3 attacks without using something like your bracers, your not brave force bracers, your bullseye bracers. And so, you know, Lightning Surge just being an attack is good. Now, on the flip side, it being a non-arrow attack makes it kind of have anti-synergy with 3 of a kind. So when you draw Lightning Surge or other, you know, non-arrow attacks off 3 of a kind, it can be very awkward. And so I think that these are all things that you have to weigh the pros and cons for playing them. I think that I would maybe play 1 or 2 copies of Lightning Surge going forward. But your deck does need a certain number of these just go again attacks. And we'll talk about kind of like the roles that all these cards have. Premeditate, I think, is kind of like an all-star card into Oldham. And so I was quite surprised when the Wolfpack team wasn't playing them. I think that they should be a part of like almost every Lexi deck, because they just like gives you the opportunity to chain together consecutive strong turns, especially after you pressure the Oldham's arsenal. In addition, they are playable as well in the mirror, just a little bit more proactive of a game plan. Playing Wolfpack is playing Sikkim Shot, and Magnolia wasn't. So this and the Lightning Surge are kind of similar or like interchangeable. And then Wolfpack was playing, I think, Rainbow Winter's Bites, and that kind of goes with their Chilling Ice Vein, you know, ice package, to have increased disruption. And then they're also playing through Art of Wars, and I think they were playing Art of Wars instead of playing, you know, cards like Premeditate. I think Art of War is a good flexibility card, and definitely gets a little bit better, especially when people are trying to play, you know, Buckling Blow plus Buckle. It lets you block with an arrow from your arsenal, so you can like pitch a card, play Art of War, let you block with attacks from your arsenal, and then block with, you know, something from your hand plus something from your arsenal. Or you can even use Voltaire to load an arrow into your arsenal so that you can block with it there. I would say that I definitely don't want to be on 0 Art of Wars going forward. but I don't know what the right number is. Probably between 1 or 2. We talked about Codex of Inertia when we were going through it. It's just a good card advantage card. And then Magnolia was also playing yellow drill shots. I suspect, just for like the fatigue Oldham matchup. And yellow infecting shots, I think also similarly. It must be for like both for like resources and then also, just to have additional hit triggers that are kind of relevant against Oldham. And they're also playing yellow searing shots, which I am not entirely sure what the purpose of this is, other than just like reducing the number of reds in your deck and increasing the total number of like the total resource. Because like a lot of times, especially if your hand is like 2 like 0 cost arrows, you can like play the hand off of a yellow and 1 yellow Withering Shot. I think this is just like also in the line. Withering Shot's kind of interesting. It's very like the frailty token's really good in the mirror. And it's also like pretty good against decks like Katsu. So, Withering Shot is definitely a tech card that you can consider playing. And then Magnolia is playing all these blues that, Wolfpack is playing all these blues that Magnolia is not. So like honestly, like probably the reason why Magnolia is playing all these yellows is so that they can, you kind of cheat on playing as many blues. How many blues are they playing actually? Yeah, so they're only playing 3 blues, so they're playing 25 yellows. So their whole deck is like very they're greedy, I guess, on the resource side, but they kind of in exchange get like a little bit more power. Plus, you don't necessarily need 3 resources all the time, although you can, optimize your deck to make use of 3 resources. So I wanted to talk about kind of like the average plays that the Lexi deck is going to be making, and then what kinds of card combinations you really want to set up. So like it really depends on how your resource curve is built. So like for Wolfpack, if your resource curve is based off of blues, then you really want to be playing 1 0 cost arrow, like a Falcon Wing, Endless Arrow, Drill Shot, etc., into a 1 cost arrow. So you have like Heat Seekers, Fatigue Shot, the works, whatever, Remorseless. And so the basic kind of play pattern is, you throw a 0 and you throw a 1, and then you arsenal a card. Or you throw a 0, you throw a 1, and then you play something like Codex of Frailty, and then hopefully you get to play like another 0. And these are the types of plays that you really want to be making. For 3 of a kind, ideally you want to, when you spend 1 to play it, you want to be drawing and playing, 2 or 3 more arrows, but then oftentimes you'll get to arsenal an extra card. And so the idea of like carrying over, like a lot of your turns are basically like 3 card hand turns, but then being able to carry over an extra card is really like why your deck is strong. And so like the card that you carry over, then hopefully it's like a 0 cost arrow. So if you carry over like a 0 cost arrow, then the next turn, your 3 card hand, now you can throw 4 cards because you can use Voltaire to give both your arrows go again instead of giving one of them +1. And then you can throw 4 cards. Or if one of your cards is a buff, then you can throw 5 cards. If you have 2 buffs, or if you have a Codex plus a buff, then you can throw 6 cards. And so like all of these things kind of like compound, and that's like how you build up the turns in this deck. You go from like a 3 card hand into a 4 card, 5 card, 6 card hand play. And part of the thing that makes all this possible is having good arsenal cards. So I would say that the best arsenal cards are going to be cards that you can always play at the beginning of your turn. And the reason why that's the case is because like if you do have an empty arsenal, so that the deck, all the Lexi decks play 9 copies of Bolton Shot, and then some of them play Pathing Helix as well. And so being able to reload, you know, like having an extra card in your arsenal does let you unlock like an extra card that you could play that turn. And like what we were talking about, like being able to build from like the regular like 3-card hand to a 4-card hand, but getting like the reload lets you play an additional card that turn. So then, if that's the case, like you really want to be able to take advantage of these hit triggers that reload. Otherwise, you know, Bolt and Shot is still pretty good rate because of the clause where if it gets +1, it has go again. So it's kind of just like one more power than all the other arrows. But if you do get the reload, then it's worth even more. So cards like Premeditate are really good in the arsenal. Cards like Rain Razors that you can play at the beginning of the turn, really good. Cards like Winter's Bite. Again, like the pattern is, this is a card that we can play at the very beginning of the turn. No, like I don't have to use Lexi if I don't need to. Oh, that's another big thing. Like, if you do end up playing cards like Codex of Inertia, you really want to be saving your Lexi activation, if possible, for after you play this card, so that you're like increasing your chances of this card being worth 2 cards at least. And so, you know, like Winter's Bite, like you can flip it with Lexi, but you can also just like play it. And so these cards that you can play at the beginning of the turn, that's why they're really strong. Cards like Lightning Surge, Falcon Wing, Sikkim Shot, like cards that just have go again, attacks that just have go again, also very strong arsenal cards. Now, the other half of that is like these cards that you can just like play out of your arsenal are also very good face down arsenal cards when you do set up like a double arsenal. And that's kind of the reason why you need, I think, these Falcon Wings, Sikkim Shots, Lightning Surge. Like you need a certain number of these in your deck. And figuring out like the right number is, I guess, like the tricky part of deck building. But just know that you need at least like some of these cards in your deck, because they're the cards that let you, you know, just at the beginning of the turn, you just like, you have a card that's face down, you just throw it. I haven't used my Lexi ability necessarily. I haven't like committed anything else. I don't need to commit my Snapdragon Scalers. I can just like throw this and then go, and then I can use all my cards, and that's huge. And so, you know, like that's why you want to be trying to set these arsenals up whenever possible. And you know, it can be hard because you do need a face-up card in your arsenal to have access to 2 arsenal slots. It can be hard because when you're drawing off of Ponder token, you can't necessarily control what the face-down arsenal card is going to be. But you know, at the very least, you want like one of these in your arsenal so that you can just like play it, flip up Lexi, and then not have to use Snapdragon Scalers, or not need, you know, like if you have like a Bolt and Shot, you need a pump spell, like a Premeditate, Art of War, Rain Razors, you know, to really unlock it and to just like give it go again without the without using Snapdragon Scaler. So these are things that you're like, you really you want to keep an eye out for. And then so that's like kind of how you set up how you build from like your basic turn, which is I just throw, you know, like a Drill Shot go again into an Infecting Shot +1, or I throw like an Infecting Shot go again into a Drill Shot +1. And then I arsenal card, and how you build up from going from a 3-card hand into, you know, like a 4-card hand. Maybe like you hit a Heat Seeker, so you have a face up, and then you get to arsenal like one of these cards like Falcon Wing and Lightning Surge. When it comes to deciding whether to, you know, just like play out, whether or not to just like play out these cards or to like keep them in your arsenal and like wait for like a bigger turn, the main thing is that you just want to be keeping track of how many of these like turn boost, like I'll call it like a turn booster, or like something that like unlocks your turn that you have. Like how many Premeditates do I have left in my deck? How many Rain Razors do I have left in my deck? Am I going to draw these? And these are the cards that really reward you, you know, for keeping a Bolt and Shot, keeping a Falcon Wing in your arsenal instead of just, you know, just playing it for that turn. And so, and the added benefit of, you know, keeping one of these arrows is that instead of having Voltaire give go again to one of your arrows, you get to give it +1. So that's like the trade-off. And what else is there to go over? Let's just take a look at the other deck. Yeah, I mean, like the principles I think are the same no matter like which configuration that you play. I would caution people from playing, like 3 copies of Headshot, especially if you are going to be playing Codex of Inertia, just because this card's very awkward to, flip off of these random effects. But there's probably some balance between these two lists that I would go. I'm not entirely comfortable with playing as few blues as is in the Magnolia list. What looks like, but I know that Matthew McGinnis did really well with it at the Pro Tour, so maybe there's some merit to it. And I think the only other type of card that Lexi really has is like a disruptive type of card. So you have like Winter's Bites, Arctic Incarcerations, Command and Conquers, Chilling Ice Veins. And for the most part, these types of disruptive cards are your other way of setting up like your larger 5 and 6 card hands. So being able to do something like throw an attack, then play an Arctic Incarceration, or just like like going command, just like playing Command and Conquer, and that's your turn, and then you get to arsenal a card, or you can go like a 0-cost arrow into Command and Conquer, and that's your turn. Really buys you the time to set up your larger turns, and you really want to like in Lexi be like snowballing for these larger turns, because oftentimes like the big payoff when you're playing like Lexi Mirrors, or you're playing against like Oldham, or you're playing into whatever other deck, is being able to chain together like Rain Razor's turns. Then you have like a turn where you play Codex of Frailty, and then you have another turn where you hit with a Heat Seeker. Being able to continuously chain together these like turns that just like keep on tacking on. I'm gonna keep on playing out these like 4 or 5 card hands at you. That's really like what your main advantage is gonna come from. And so I don't really want to talk too much about sideboarding strategy. I think that's like pretty specific. You just want to figure out in the matchup whether or not you want to be more disruptive or whether or not you want to be more proactive. And those are like the cards that you really want to be like choosing to play. And then figuring out a lot of times is understanding you can't play all of your expensive arrows. Like you can't play all like Chilling Ice Vein and Infecting Shot and Remorseless and Heat Seeker and be playing Command and Conquers. And playing Sikkim Shots. Like your deck just doesn't have enough resources to really support that. Like ideally you want to be drawing, about one of these cards per turn. And so if you want to draw like actually like it's like a little bit less than 1 per turn. So you want to draw a little bit less than 1 per turn. So like the max number of the cards that you could be playing is like 15. Like ideally you want to be playing like less than 15, maybe like somewhere around the 12, like 10 to 12 range. And so figuring out, okay, so I'm playing into Oldham, Remorseless. It has the defense reaction clause. Maybe it's not as strong. Or I'm playing against a deck like Dromai. Dromai doesn't really just like chain together a ton of actions, so maybe I can like shave those to make my curve better. I think increasing the consistency for your deck is going to prove out to be beneficial when you're playing this deck at your future events. So I hope all this talk was kind of helpful. This video is again pretty long. So if you do like the content, hopefully just give us a like, record your videos, send them to the coach review streams. Again, the submission form is going to be in the description below, and hope to see you guys on the next video, and good luck at your next road to nationals.